They say dogs don't understand regret, but I think they're wrong. Every night when I close my eyes, I smell it again. That moment when I knew I was too late. Rain-soaked earth, fear sharp as broken glass in the air, and underneath it all, the scent of a little boy slipping away faster than I could reach him. I am Blaze, and I think about death differently than humans do. To them, it's an ending. To me, it's just when a sense starts to change, starts to fade, starts to become something else entirely. But some sense I carry with me everywhere, woven into my own smell now, part of who I am. What does it mean to save someone? I used to think I knew. Now I wonder if the real question is, what does it mean to be saved? Humans think we live in the moment, but that's not quite right. We live in layers of moments, past scents lingering in our fur, present sounds filling our ears, future storms we can taste on the wind 3 hours before they arrive. I am 7 years old, born in these Colorado mountains when the aspen leaves were gold just like today. I wonder sometimes if that's why I understand autumn so well. It was the first season I ever smelled, the first lesson about things being beautiful precisely because they don't last. My handler Jake found me at 8 weeks old. Not chose me, found me. There's a difference, though humans don't always understand that. You don't choose your purpose. You recognize it when it recognizes you. That first day at the training facility, when they scattered scent trails across the practice field, I didn't think about following them. I just knew where they led. For 6 years, Jake and I have been partners in the truest sense. He reads the weather and the maps. I read the stories the mountain tells through scent. He carries the rope and the radio. I carry the responsibility of being the bridge between lost and found. The mountains here are not kind, but they are honest. They tell you exactly what they're thinking. In the way the wind shifts before a storm, in how the rock sounds different under your paws when it's getting ready to let go, in the silence that falls over the forest when something dangerous is approaching. I've learned to listen to all of it. But the thing about the mountains is this: they keep secrets too. And some secrets, once revealed, change everything. Our station sits where the safe world meets the wild one. Every morning, Jake and I run the training courses, and I think about the people we might have to find that day. Each person carries their own unique scent signature. Not just soap and shampoo, but fear, hope, determination, love. I can smell someone's relationship with their family in how they move through the world. That's how I first understood Hannah Morrison was different. She moved through our town like someone carrying invisible weight. Not sadness exactly, but awareness. Like she understood something about loss that others hadn't learned yet. When she brought 8-year-old Tommy to visit our station, I could smell protective love so strong it was almost visible. That fierce mother scent that says, I would fight the entire world to keep this child safe. Tommy smelled like curiosity and mountain air, and the particular confidence of children who know they are deeply loved. At 8, he knew bird calls, could predict weather changes by watching cloud patterns, understood instinctively how to move quietly through the forest so as not to startle wildlife. Blaze, he would say, crouching down to my level with that serious expression children get when they're asking important questions. Do you ever get scared when you're looking for someone? How do you explain to a child that fear and purpose aren't opposites? That sometimes you're most afraid when you care most about succeeding? I would just lean into his small hands and let him scratch behind my ears, absorbing his scent of peanut butter and playground dust and that indefinable smell of childhood. All possibility and trust. Hannah would watch us with eyes that seemed to memorize every detail. Now I understand she was storing up moments, the way some animals store up food for winter. She knew somehow that moments could become scarce. In the wilderness, we learn to read signs. A broken branch means someone passed this way. Disturbed earth means something heavy fell or was dragged. Changed animal behavior means predators nearby. But I missed the signs in Hannah. I didn't recognize that her fierce attention to each moment with Tommy wasn't just love. It was preparation for loss. Sometimes I wonder if mothers have a sense we don't understand. If they can smell danger coming for their children long before it arrives. And all their careful watching is really just waiting. September 15th smelled wrong from the moment I woke up. Dogs experience time differently than humans. We don't count minutes or hours. We measure time in layers of scent, in changes of light, in the rhythm of familiar routines being disrupted. That morning, my internal clock felt off-kilter. The air pressure was dropping fast, but it was more than weather. Something in the mountain's mood had shifted. Jake noticed my restlessness, but misread it as eagerness for our morning run. Humans do that sometimes. They interpret our warnings as excitement, our anxiety as energy. I tried to tell him through body language. Ears back, tail low, that specific whine I use for something's not right. But he just scratched my head and checked his weather radio. If I could have spoken human words that morning, what would I have said? Don't let them go up there today? The mountain is holding its breath. Something is waiting to break. At 11 a.m., Hannah and Tommy arrived at the trailhead. I was running perimeter checks nearby and caught their scent on the wind. Hannah's lavender soap mixed with sunscreen and that edge of excitement that comes with planned adventures. But underneath, there was something else. A mother's instinctive tension, so faint even she probably didn't recognize it. Tommy's scent was pure joy mixed with mountain air. 8 years old, and completely trusting that the adults in his life would keep him safe. That's the thing about children's scent. It doesn't lie. No layer of worry, no backup plans. Just absolute faith that today would be another good day in a life full of good days. I wanted to follow them. Every instinct I had was pulling me toward that trail. But Jake called me back for a training exercise. How many times have I replayed that moment? If I had trusted my nose instead of obeying the command, would I have been there when the mountain let go? At 2:47 p.m., the radio crackled with words that changed everything. Code red. Landslide on Cedar Ridge Trail. The sound of Jake's intake of breath told me what my nose already knew. Hannah and Tommy were up there. During the drive to the trailhead, I thought about scent trails, how they tell stories, connect past to present, lead from question to answer. But what happens when a scent trail just stops? When the story breaks in the middle? The slide had created chaos in every sense I understood the world. Normal scent patterns were destroyed, layered over with dust and debris, and the metallic smell of disturbed earth. It was like trying to read a book where half the pages had been torn out and scattered. But I found them. That's what they trained me for. To follow scent stories through impossible conditions, to be the translator between the mountain's violence and human hope. 50 feet down in the debris field, I found Hannah conscious but trapped, her leg bent wrong, her arms wrapped around Tommy. And I smelled immediately what she couldn't accept yet. That a child's scent, when it starts to fade, smells like autumn leaves and morning mist and something indescribably sad. In that moment, I understood something about my purpose that training had never taught me. Sometimes finding someone isn't about bringing them home alive. Sometimes it's about bearing witness. Sometimes it's about being the one who knows, who remembers, who carries the story forward. "Oh God, Blaze," Hannah whispered when she saw me. "Tommy won't wake up. He won't wake up and I can't. I can't move my leg." She was talking to Tommy like he could hear her, stroking his hair, promising him everything would be fine. But her scent told a different story. Fear giving way to knowledge, hope beginning to transform into something else entirely. I have been trained to assess injuries, to prioritize rescues, to make quick decisions about who can be saved and in what order. But training didn't prepare me for this. Knowing that one person's life was ending while another person's reason for living was ending with it. Jake arrived and immediately called for the helicopter. We both knew it was procedure, not hope. Sometimes the forms we follow are really just ways of honoring what we cannot change. During the evacuation, I stayed close to Hannah, not because protocol required it, but because I could smell her beginning to break apart at a molecular level. Grief, I learned that day, has its own scent, sharp and empty and somehow final. The helicopter took Tommy first. Hannah watched until it disappeared over the ridge, and I smelled the exact moment when denial shifted into knowing. It's a very specific scent change, like the difference between winter coming and winter arrived. After they airlifted Hannah to the hospital, I stayed at the slide site until dark, not searching anymore. There was nothing left to find, but I couldn't leave. Some invisible thread connected me to this place now, to this story that felt unfinished. That night, I dreamed about scent trails that lead nowhere, about the silence that comes after the last echo fades, about the weight of knowing things that can't be changed. Tommy Morrison died at 11:43 p.m. on September 15th. I wasn't at the hospital, but I felt it, like a sense suddenly going out of the world forever. The thing about being a search and rescue dog is that we're trained to think about successful outcomes. Find the person, bring them home, reunite them with their family. We practice happy endings until they become muscle memory. But what do you do with the scent of a child who will never come home? For 3 days after Tommy's death, I carried his scent in my fur like a responsibility. Hannah's lavender soap fading from my memory, but Tommy's scent of curiosity and trust and 8-year-old invincibility clinging to me, refusing to let go. The funeral was on September 18th. I watched from outside the church, the way I'd learned to observe without intruding, and I could smell the collective grief of an entire community. But Hannah's grief was different, deeper, more primal. Like the earth after a landslide, fundamentally altered. After the funeral, I expected life to return to some version of normal. That's what usually happens after we lose someone in the mountains. The community mourns, then closes ranks, then gradually heals. But Hannah's grief didn't follow any pattern I recognized. Every morning at exactly 7 a.m., she would drive to the cemetery. I began timing my patrol runs to cross paths with her. Not close enough to intrude, just close enough to witness. Her scent during those visits told a story I was still learning to read. Love that had nowhere to go, conversations with someone who couldn't answer back. Then she started driving to the landslide site, just sitting in her car, staring up at the scar on the mountain. I could smell her from a quarter mile away. That particular scent of someone trying to understand the incomprehensible. 3 weeks after the accident, I started dreaming about Hannah. Not rescue dreams. I'd been having those about Tommy, dreams where I arrived at the slide site early enough to make a difference. But dreams about Hannah sitting alone in her car, breathing air that no longer smelled like her son's laughter. That's when I understood something about my job that they don't teach in search and rescue training. Sometimes the person who needs finding is the one who survived. On October 2nd, Hannah's scent trail led not to the parking area, but into the debris field itself. 40 feet down the unstable slope, in almost the exact spot where I'd found her and Tommy, she was sitting in the mud and loose rocks, wearing her work scrubs with cartoon bears on them. When I approached, she didn't seem surprised to see me, like she'd been expecting me, or like she'd given up expecting anything and I was just part of the landscape now. "I keep thinking I'll find something," she said without looking at me. Her voice carried the scent of tears that hadn't fallen yet, of words that had been spoken to empty rooms. A toy, or a piece of his jacket, or, I don't know, something that says he was real. I sat down next to her because that's what you do when someone is breaking apart. You position yourself as a solid thing in their collapsing world. But I was thinking, how do you tell someone that their child was real? That his scent is woven into the mountain now? Part of the story this place tells? "They keep telling me it gets easier," she continued. The scent of rage was starting to mix with her grief. Good, I thought. Anger meant she was still fighting. Everyone has advice. He's in a better place. God needed another angel. At least he didn't suffer. "Do you know what I want to tell them, Blaze?" She looked directly at me, and I saw something in her eyes that I'd never encountered in all my years of finding lost people. Not despair, something deeper than despair. The recognition that some losses are too big for the words humans use to contain them. I want to tell them that 8-year-old boys aren't supposed to be angels. They're supposed to get dirty and ask a million questions and leave Lego pieces on the kitchen floor. Her hands were shaking, and I could smell the salt of tears before they fell. I was supposed to keep him safe. That was my one job in this entire world. Keep Tommy safe. And I brought him up here. I chose this trail. I looked at the weather and thought, oh, just a little rain later. We'll be fine. For the first time since the accident, she cried the way grief demands to be cried, deep, broken sobs that seemed to come from some place beyond language. I did the only thing I knew how to do. I moved closer and leaned against her, offering the weight and warmth of my body. She buried her face in my fur and held on like I was the only solid thing left in a world that had proven unreliable. And maybe I was. We sat there as the sun moved across the sky, and Hannah talked. Not to me exactly. Dogs understand the difference between being talked to and being talked with. She was talking to the universe, using me as a witness. She told me about Tommy's first word dog, his first steps toward their old German Shepherd Max, his first day of school. But more than the stories, I was listening to what her scent told me. That sharing these memories wasn't making her feel better. It was making her feel more alone. That's when I understood something crucial about human grief. It's not just missing someone. It's missing who you were when that someone was alive. Hannah wasn't just grieving Tommy. She was grieving the version of herself that was Tommy's mother. He was going to be 9 next month, she whispered as darkness settled around us. I already bought his present. It's wrapped and sitting in my closet. A book about search and rescue dogs. The way she said it broke something in me. Not just sadness, but recognition. I had spent 3 weeks trying to understand why every successful rescue since Tommy felt incomplete. Now I knew. Because the boy who wanted to work with dogs like me would never get the chance. But sitting there in the debris field with Hannah, I realized something else. Maybe there are different kinds of rescues. Maybe sometimes saving someone doesn't mean bringing them back from physical danger. Maybe sometimes it means sitting with them in their danger, bearing witness to their breaking, being present for the long work of learning to breathe again. I don't know how to live without him, Hannah said into the darkness. Everyone keeps expecting me to figure out how to move on. But I don't want to move on. Moving on feels like leaving him behind. I stayed with her until Jake's headlamp found us 3 hours later. When he saw us sitting together in the slide zone, he understood immediately without needing explanation. As we made our way carefully back up the slope, Hannah walking between Jake and me, I realized something had shifted. Not healed, but acknowledged. Grief had been witnessed. Loss had been companioned. And for the first time since September 15th, I felt like I'd actually found someone who needed finding. The next morning, Hannah showed up at the rescue station with a question I could smell on her before she spoke. "Jake," she said, "what would it take for me to adopt Blaze?" I understood immediately what she was really asking. What would it take to have a witness? Someone who had been there, who knew the weight of what she carried, who wouldn't try to convince her to feel better. That's how I came to live with Hannah Morrison, not as retirement from my real work, but as an expansion of what it means to serve. Jake and I still respond to calls, still work the mountains, still bring lost people home. But now I have learned about a different kind of search and rescue. The kind that happens in living rooms and at kitchen tables, in the long hours between midnight and dawn when grief wakes up and demands attention. I am Hannah's witness, her companion in loss that will never fully heal, but has learned to breathe alongside hope. Every day, Hannah talks to me about Tommy, shows me his pictures, tells me stories I've heard before, but that somehow need telling again. I've learned that repetition isn't about memory failure. It's about love looking for places to land. She's opened a support group for parents who have lost children. They meet in our living room every Thursday evening, and I've learned to recognize the particular scent of this specific kind of sorrow. I position myself near whoever needs the weight of dog presence most. Usually the newest members, who still carry the sharp, metallic scent of fresh grief. Hannah still visits Tommy's grave every week, but now I go with her. She still drives to the landslide site sometimes, but now we walk together to the memorial marker the town installed. She reads his name carved in mountain granite. Thomas James Morrison, age 8. He loved every sunrise. 6 months after I came to live with Hannah, she surprised me by enrolling in EMT training. "If I'm going to keep living," she told me one evening, "I need to save someone, not to replace Tommy. Nothing could ever do that, but because he would have wanted to save people." Now Hannah works with our rescue team, and she has a particular gift for talking to family members during searches. She understands what waiting feels like from the inside. Last month, we helped find a 6-year-old girl who had wandered away from a camping trip. When I led the team to her location, cold and scared but unharmed, Hannah was the one who wrapped her in a blanket and carried her back to her parents. Later, watching the family reunion, Hannah whispered to me, "Tommy would have loved this moment." And I understood then what I'd been learning all along. Some people can't be saved in the way we want to save them. Some losses carve wounds too deep for healing. But we can learn to carry our unsavable love forward. We can let it transform into different kinds of saving. I still carry Tommy's scent with me. Not as failure now, but as responsibility. To keep finding people who need finding. To keep showing up for the kinds of loss that don't have easy answers. Hannah and I have learned to live with questions that don't have answers. Some pain doesn't go away. It just learns to walk alongside you, like a loyal companion who never leaves your side. Here's what I've learned about saving people. Sometimes the rescue happens years after the emergency. Sometimes being found means learning that you're not alone in your unfixable breaking. Sometimes the most important thing you can do for someone is just stay. If you've ever lost someone you couldn't protect, know this. Your love for them doesn't end with your ability to save them. Sometimes the greatest rescue is learning to carry that love forward. One step at a time. One day at a time. One breath at a time. Tell me in the comments, who are you carrying forward? Sometimes sharing their name is the first step in learning to breathe again. Subscribe here and never miss another story that inspires. Subscribe here and never miss another story that inspires.